Bonjour tout le monde. Avant de commencer avec les bonnes nouvelles d'aujourd'hui, je veux prendre un moment pour envoyer toutes nos pensées et notre appui aux familles en Nouvelle-Écosse qui vivent des moments épouvantables de perte. Before I begin, I do want to express the support of all Canadians for families in Nova Scotia who are facing devastating news yesterday and today. We will continue to be with them. What a team. I am so excited about putting forward this incredible team of Canadians who will continue the hard work of stepping up to support people, to create great jobs, to grow the economy in ways that works for everyone. This is a positive step in a moment of consequential impact in the world and in the country. We know times are challenging, but this is the team that is going to be able to continue the hard work, rolling up their sleeves and delivering for Canadians from coast to coast to coast as we build a brighter and ambitious future for all Canadians. C'est un grand plaisir d'être ici pour présenter l'équipe qui va se retrousser les manches pour continuer de travailler, pour livrer concrètement pour les Canadiens, pour créer des bons emplois, pour aider avec les coûts de la vie, pour continuer de mener sur la réconciliation, sur la lutte contre les changements climatiques, avec une vision positive et ambitieuse pour le pays. Je suis très excité qu'on se mette au travail dans les moments à venir, mais je suis très content de vous voir en si grand nombre ici aujourd'hui et j'ouvre aux questions.
Thank you, Prime Minister. Merci, Premier Ministre. We have time for 15 minutes for questions from media. Nous avons 15 minutes pour les questions des médias et on va commencer avec Ryan Tumulty from the National Post.
Yeah, good morning, Prime Minister. Can you explain your decision to fire Marco Mendicino, Monaforte, and David Lametti and remove them entirely from your cabinet?
I want to thank everyone who has served this country and this cabinet so well over the past number of years. This is a moment where putting forward the strongest possible team with fresh energy and a range of skills that are going to be able to continue the really important work of showing Canadians the positive and ambitious vision for the future that we're so committed to and that I know Canadians need and deserve. I'm really excited about the work we're doing, and quite frankly, we have a huge team in caucus and across the country working really hard to deliver for Canadians in all sorts of great ways.
Pourriez-vous répéter en français, s'il vous plaît?
Je soulignais qu'il y a des gens qui ont très, très bien servi leur pays, leur communauté et ce cabinet pendant de longues années. Et je les remercie et je leur souhaite encore du beau travail au sein de notre équipe pour continuer à livrer pour les Canadiens. Mais dans ces moments de conséquences, je voulais mettre de l'avant l'équipe appropriée, une équipe extrêmement forte pour répondre aux besoins du moment et pour continuer de mener avec ambition et optimisme et une vision positive de ce pays que je sais sera incarnée par l'équipe que j'ai ici avec moi aujourd'hui.
Bonjour, Monsieur le Premier ministre. Valérie Gamache de Radio-Canada. 23 portefeuilles qui changent de main, 7 nouveaux visages au cabinet. Est-ce que ça allait si mal que ça? Et étiez-vous si mal préparé pour des élections qu'il faille faire un aussi grand ménage aujourd'hui?
Je pense que les gens comprennent à quel point on est en train de vivre des moments de conséquences au pays et à travers le monde. Et donner un nouveau souffle d'énergie à cette équipe avec des nouveaux membres, mais aussi avec des nouveaux défis pour notre équipe économique, notre équipe de ministres bien rodés. J'ai hâte qu'on puisse vraiment se retrousser les manches puis s'attaquer aux grands problèmes avec l'ambition, avec une approche positive et inclusive. Je sais que les gens ont besoin d'aide, mais ont aussi besoin d'une vision claire pour l'avenir qu'on est en train de bâtir ensemble. Et je suis très excité d'avoir cette équipe à mes côtés pour cela.
Hi, Mr. Trudeau. Mackenzie Gray with Global. The latest polls today have you down 10 points to the Conservatives. You've changed 30 portfolios. You've fired 7 cabinet ministers. Is today's changes an admission that things have not gone well for your government in 2023?
On the contrary, one of the things that we've seen is even as we're seeing record job creations and inflation drop down into the range set by the Bank of Canada, we need to continue to put our very best foot forward and work even harder to deliver for Canadians. And having a renewed team with a range of new voices and new skills and experience, new challenges for our strongest ministers to be able to step up and meet this consequential moment in the lives of Canadians, in the things happening around the world that Canadians are so well positioned to meet and thrive through. I'm excited about this team, and I'm excited about the work we're going to be able to do together.
Bonjour, Monsieur Trudeau. Raphaël Pirot de l'agence QMI.
Well, I asked, where's the beef? Let's call this for what this is. Oh my God! They are so hopelessly woke. How dare you? That is the intellectual capital of the left today. Give me a break. You are now watching the Daily Roundup.
Hello, everyone. Joining us once again, Alexa Lavoie, our Quebec correspondent, and myself, Tamara Ugolini, for our daily I can't even speak off the bat. Geez, our daily roundup on Wednesday, July 26th. As you may have been seeing there in our preview before we started the live stream, Trudeau is currently giving media availability on his newly announced cabinet shuffle that sees, I think it's 30 ministers shuffled around. Some are out completely. Many are transferring to new portfolios. And so we're before we get into the nitty gritty and some of the housekeeping, we wanted to show you this response from Trudeau, who's being asked about the Conservative Party and how they're leading in the polls. I'm not sure if we're going to show his live response there.
But did you heard what he was saying? It's like we are facing now new consequences in this whole world. And I think like changing for fresh people will help us to challenge and to fight against these new consequences. And I was just like, did you just say that your previous cabinet was actually incompetent?
I think it's becoming clear. As I mentioned, and sorry that I must have missed the tail end of his response there. But yeah, the federal Conservative Party is leading in the polls. And I think that's pretty clear that his previous cabinet was incompetent. We're seeing 7 ministers, big profile names here, who are being shuffled out completely or replaced. And I think it's becoming evident to the out-of-touch Liberals that Canadians are viewing the socio-economic political landscape in Canada as a dumpster fire. And the polling is starting to finally reflect what Canadians are seeing and feeling on the ground. And so this cabinet shuffle is pretty massive. I think that we can see there behind Trudeau, he's essentially there for a class photo with his new cabinet and the new minister names. Many of them, as I mentioned, big profiles who we have had launched campaigns against. So, for instance, Marco Mendicino, the former public safety minister, he is out completely. He was responsible for the invocation of the recommendation for the invocation of the Emergency Measures Act, which Trudeau invoked on peacefully demonstrating truckers that took to the nation's capital with their grievances, where traditionally and historically you always took your political grievances to the public square. That is the main public square in Canada. And so he essentially invoked war measures legislation to quash and squash that peaceful protest. And Marco Mendicino, there was texts that were released through the inquiry that took place that he asked how many tanks would be needed. Like it was some sort of Tiananmen Square reference on his own peacefully demonstrating citizens. We launched a campaign, firemendicino.com. to expose his repeated lies and his misguidance. And as you mentioned, Alexa, his general incompetence to adequately manage something of such great magnitude to the Canadian socio-political landscape. So he is out completely. David Lametti, the Minister of Justice, I mean, many Canadians would argue over the last 3 years, there's just been a complete abdication, a complete absence of justice throughout the COVID hysteria. Our democratic processes were also squashed and quashed throughout the hysteria. And so he is out completely. What do you make of this shuffle, or really this complete revamp of the Liberal front benchers?
Well, I would say, like, we can just see that the Liberals are really scared. They know already that some of their previous ministry are stigmatized by their incompetence in the past. We'll just say like Bill Blair, Lametti, or just like Omar Alghabra with the airport transportation was just a chaos. So I think its way to do is like you say, okay, we just swipe the people we know that Canadians see it like as really bad management. We'll replace them. So we will bring some fresh people that people doesn't really know who they are. So people will probably give them a chance at the next election. And he say probably, and when he invoked the equity, I was like, oh no, I said probably like more woke people would take the place. I was just like, I cannot believe that he actually say, we will bring some more equity. I was like, okay, I'm for equity, but not your kind of equity that you're bringing to Canada.
Well, and his kind of equity basically disregards the merits and the actual credentials of the people involved, and rather just hires them based on whether or not they're a visible minority. They don't have to have the integrity or the background or the portfolio, robust portfolio behind them to become and to be put into these positions. They just have to be essentially a visible minority, which I would say is textbook racism. But anyway, one of the other ministers who I want to mention is the one who was pretty notorious after her comments in the House of Commons, MP Yara Sachs, who basically tried to say that Hong Kong, the word Hong Kong, was an acronym for Hail Hitler. Hong Kong is an actual word. It is not an acronym. So before we get into where she is currently headed in terms of a new ministerial duty, let's play this clip for you of her in the House of Commons. I think this is about this time last year.
Madam Speaker, and I've heard the words of my colleague on the other side of the floor, and so I have a few questions. As a Jewish member of Parliament myself and a descendant of survivors of the Holocaust as well, I, like many Canadians, were shocked to see Nazi flags, Confederate flags, dismayed and angry and hurt, horribly hurt. So how many Nazi flags does it take? How many donors from the Capitol riots, it's 1,100 and counting, who have donated to these illegal blockades? How many guns need to be seized? How much vitriol do we have to see of Hong Kong, which is an acronym for Hail Hitler, do we need to see by these protesters on social media? How many times do we have to see clear indicators that what is out there is not about the hard 2 years that every Canadian has suffered, but is it about something much deeper and darker and uglier that is threatening the stability of this House, the work that we do as legislators each and every day for our constituents, the democracy that we have to uphold? When will it be an emergency for you and your colleagues across the floor?
The honourable member knows.
Oh my goodness. Well, and that is in, post the complete betrayal of democracy, right? We were prevented access to public buildings, to deputations, to delegations. Repeatedly, concerns of constituents fell on the deaf ears of entitled politicians throughout the COVID hysteria. That was clear. That is why the truckers took to the nation's capital in January and February of 2022 to air their grievances. So she's referring, it's quite literally doublespeak, and that is a 1984 reference by George Orwell. We have just revamped and refurbished that book. You can find it at, I think it's 1984book.com, and order your copy of it, because we often make a lot of those references and those terms that are present in that book, and it's literally doublespeak, because she's saying one thing, but it quite literally means the exact opposite. And now this is the minister, and Andrew Lawton from True North had a really funny tweet, just short and sweet tweet about this. He says, the woman who thinks honk honk means Hail Hitler is now in charge of the mental health file in Canada. So she has now been appointed to the Minister of Mental Health and Addictions, where she herself seems like she might struggle with some mental health afflictions. I mean, she seems pretty paranoid in that clip that, somehow Hong Kong, that's in reference to the truckers who were honking out front of the Parliament buildings, somehow that means Hail Hitler. That seems a little bit paranoid to me.
But they probably say, like, which person can represent the mental health issue if the person have already mental health issues? So you just pick up like the one that fit with the job requirement.
Well, it's funny because it was pointed out to me that Roman Baber is running for as an MP against Yara Sachs, and he was one of the very early pandemic dissident politicians. He spoke out. He was a previous provincial Conservative member in Doug Ford's caucus in Ontario, and he spoke out very early on about the pandemic pandemonium. One of the very few politicians who actually listened to the concerns of his constituents, took them back to the the legislature, and voiced their concerns on their behalf, right? That is the entire reason that we vote for politicians, to advocate and speak on our behalf. So he did not ignore the concerns of his constituents. He brought them forward. And for that, he was reprimanded by the party because he did not toe the line, and he did not blindly follow the advice of the public health officers who were never elected to run the country and run various jurisdictions the way that they did. And so he was reprimanded for that. But he's running against this new health minister, which I think this is pretty clear that an election should or could be looming in our midst. What do you think, Alexa? I mean, we're coming out of 2021 when there was a snap election, and I don't remember exactly what the numbers were, but cost Canadians millions of dollars for this election that was basically just a way for Trudeau to signal. It was essentially a glorified vote of confidence for him from his cabinet. And we saw him elected as a minority government, which now he's just propped up by the NDP as they come together in this unofficial coalition to form a majority government, which is a direct hit on democracy once again. What do you think? Is an election looming in our future?
But first of all, we will never know if Justin Trudeau did win perfectly if he didn't have the China interference, because there is so many allegations right now on China interference, not only for the last election, but the other election before. So the question is, if that didn't happen, do Justin Trudeau will be a minority government or just not there at all? But the environment feel like we will have probably a snap election soon, but not only on how Justin Trudeau is acting as traveling everywhere, taking like photo shoot with everybody, trying to I would say like restore his face like that, people like him again, but that would not probably happen. But the fact that he shuffled the cabinet, changed the people, and tried to make the liberal great again, but that again, that would not work too. So the thing is, I think he's afraid. I think he see that he have no choice to go on this path, because he see like how much Canadians are angry, how much Canadians are challenging him, waiting for him, yelling at him, and protesting against him. He see that he's not well liked, and probably like he would not have any choice to go there, because he is minority government. He's not a majority government, and we know what that means. Usually, democracy will talk, and election will go at half time of your mandate.
Mm-hmm. Well, another key thing, and we discussed this a little bit yesterday on the live stream, is the shuffling out of Omar Al-Gabra, who is the now former transport minister. And so he was responsible for the border failures, essentially, throughout the COVID hysteria. And he is being replaced now by Pablo Rodriguez, who's responsible for these. Pablo Rodriguez is the former heritage minister who's responsible for all of these censorship bills that are coming down the pike. And so now Pablo's been reshuffled. He's going to be the new transport minister. It's so funny because much of our reporting at stopthecensorship.ca, where we're taking action and shedding light and shining light on the fact that these censorship bills are going to affect the information that is available to Canadians, primarily on social media and on the internet. So he is now being shuffled out, and he's being replaced by another Quebec minister who will take over the heritage portfolio. As someone who's from Quebec, Alexa, why does it seem like it's a reoccurring theme here that the heritage minister is always someone who's from Quebec?
But probably because Quebec, with our history, the fact that we arrived first, we lost the war against the English, and we did conserve our culture, our language, and we're still there. We didn't leave. French have like a strong mind. It's just like, no, we don't leave, we stay. But probably it's why we have always like heritage minister that is from Quebec. But I will say one thing about Pablo is the one responsible for the woke museum and heritage in Canada, and the push over like what you saw like recently in the Musée de la Civilisation, where a man just get completely naked in front of children. He is the one responsible for making like these institutions more woke. And now I'm afraid like now he's changing for the transportation ministry, and who is the new Quebec heritage ministry. I'm just really worried about that, because I like Quebec as much as I like it, but sometimes wokeism is really present in Quebec too. So until I see the person in charge, I will have some doubt about it. But I would say like the only thing I would say that Omar did great is the video he made with Justin Trudeau, saying like he's almost like a superhero during like Christmas, delivering like Christmas gift. Yeah, I don't know if you remember that.
That
little like
I did
James
a report
Bond.
on that. Yeah, when they were doing their Christmas,
crazy.
they were clearing Santa for Canadian airspace, as though like, let's just steal the fun completely out of Christmas for these kids and pretend like our borders are on complete lockdown, even from the mystical figure Santa Claus. They evaded our access to information request and also order paper questions on just how much that video cost the taxpayers. They try to say that all of that work happened in-house. I guess they have like a full production studio in the Heritage Ministry now, where they can shoot high-res video, audio, piece it all together with video editors, and it's all just comes internally. It doesn't cost us any money. They had props, they had parking and mileage costs, but that was basically it. And we know that these kinds of videos are not cheap to produce and film and edit. So They definitely, I think, evaded some accountability and transparency there, right? Which the Liberals claim to always have as a cornerstone of their platform. And I repeatedly hear Trudeau now discussing how he's going to roll up their sleeves. They're rolling their sleeves and getting to work. As though they're not some sort of privileged class, and he isn't some trust fund baby. He's actually a hardworking Canadian. I don't think he's ever held a full-time job in his life, other than perhaps his teaching gig, where he left halfway through the semester under questionable circumstances out in British Columbia. But a lot of people are criticizing this cabinet shuffle as being pretty much useless because of the fact that the failures of the Liberal Party start from the top, right? It starts with the Liberal leader, current Prime Minister Justin Trudeau, and with him still in that position, the rest is kind of just feathery fluff. So I guess we'll see. We had a thread here from it's an anonymous account on Twitter, but it's a House of Commons, someone who claims to be a House of Commons staffer. And they do a really thorough run through who took over, who was being shuffled, who replaces who, and so on and so forth. And it starts off here by saying that the Liberals aren't likely to win new seats in the next election, especially outside of Canada's major cities. The Conservative Party of Canada is unlikely to win the core of major cities and are certainly will not lose the rural seats that it holds. But this shuffle is an indication that the next election is about a few key areas that the shuffle addresses. And so basically what they're saying here is that this shuffle is intended to gain a stronghold on some of the seats that were a little bit uncertain or that need to be gained in order to win strategically in an election. So I would say that I would not be surprised if another election is in our midst. I don't know how we could keep on this trajectory into 2025 and not be completely decimated from an economic and socio-political standpoint if things continue on the trajectory that they are currently on.
And Mr. Trudeau is missing the best point on this. Same if you shuffle your cabinet, put some more people, new people, fresh people. But the person in top that people doesn't want to see anymore, it's you.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, exactly. And we have a super chat already, which I'm sorry, we didn't get to our housekeeping. So maybe before we get to the super chat, let's just run through a couple of our housekeeping points because we started off on a really strong foot there. Trudeau, I think his media engagement is still ongoing here where he discusses and announces this new cabinet. But before we get into it, let me remind you that we're streaming on a few different platforms, and you're probably well established on whatever platform you're joining us on currently. But we're on Rumble, YouTube, Getter, and Odyssey. And on Rumble, because we have not been completely demonetized by them, like we have been on YouTube for speaking wrong think and wrong speak. Again, that's a 1984 reference. And I've been corrected. The URL to use to buy that book or to find it is buy1984.com. So sometimes you'll hear us make those funny references. They're not so funny. They're very realistic these days. But the references to George Orwell's dystopian writings of 1984. Currently, we are hosting some book tours in conjunction with Tamara Leach on her national summer book tour to celebrate and support the release of her book, Hold the Line. And it basically details her role there in the Freedom Convoy that I've already mentioned took to the nation's capital in January and February of 2022. You can find out and order your book at theconvoybook.com. Tour dates are all announced there. If you are in one of the areas close by, there's one tomorrow starting in Barrie, Ontario, and then it moves throughout Ontario. Heads over, I think, to British Columbia thereafter. But anyway, for the next couple weeks, Tamara Leach, in conjunction with various rebels, will be on tour. So get your tickets there and order your book if you don't already, or come out to one of the book signing events. You can buy a book and have your book signed. And then we have just announced that Sheila's Save the Christians screening and her documentary tour will be coming to British Columbia. So you can head on over to savethechristians.com, find out the tour dates and locations there, and order your tickets. I think almost all of the tours that just took place in the other provinces were completely sold out. So if you're thinking about getting tickets, I would urge you to act now, because they did sell very quickly, and a multitude of the events were completely sold out. So if you're joining us on Rumble, you have the option there to give us a Rumble rant, so a small monetary donation, and then we will read your comment on screen and provide commentary, or it's a fun way to engage with us, support our independent journalism, support our work, and also a great way for you to get a tip or a trick or whatever read on screen. We get thousands of emails a day. My email personally is just a mess, so I apologize. I have people emailing me. I just can't get to them all. So it's a great way to get our attention here and now in real time by sending us a small monetary donation there through Rumble. We have one from Cool Beans 89 who gives $5. So, and this is in reference to our Hong Kong clip there from the new mental health minister. So every time I honk my car horn in traffic, I am really saluting Hitler, ? Yeah, I guess this paranoid mental health minister would think so. I mean, I don't, but my goodness, it seems like she's suffering from some anxiety and paranoia herself.
It's probably why she said that, since like during the convoy, the honking was so like disturbing for some people, like ghost honking. They were hurting it like months after like the convoy was like dismantled. So probably like she reached a good point.
It's so funny because, I don't remember his name. I think it's Joel Harnden. And I'm one of the MPs who has been exposed by Karima Said on Twitter. She is I guess, a self-proclaimed political commentator and political cartoonist. But she's been following these protests, from the Freedom Convoy to these trans and drag counter protests. And one MP in particular, he really heavily denounced the honking and the incessant noise and how triggering it was and damaging it was to have that in the downtown core of Ottawa, which is our nation's capital, which is where the truckers had gone to air their grievances. And then he is seen now in these like trans rainbow flag kind of mingling in with these demonstrators, where they use high powered megaphones and these whistles that permanently damage your eardrums. And he's standing in there like it's okay, it's kosher, it isn't an issue. And it's just so hypocritical and ironic that these politicians who denounce the honking of the truckers, who were really facing like real human rights infringements, are now on the other side of the podium claiming that, this idea that trans rights are human rights, as though they were never, who are causing lasting damage to people's eardrums through the use of weapons, essentially. And that, I guess, is just okay. So it's kind of ironic the way, again, that these politicians engage in doublespeak. And just a little bit of a tidbit of information there for you. But I think we will go to a quick ad break here, and actually we'll get into some trans nonsense when we come back.
If you want to look good and shine like me, you can do so at our store. Go to ribbonnewstore.com. On this website, you have so much different style to wear, as this one, my favorite one, Justin Castro. With my code Alexa10, you will have 10% off on your next purchase. So don't hesitate, go now and look so good like me.
Living with spare protein in a post-pandemic world is something we we all have to grapple with, whether you've had the virus, you've been vaccinated yourself, or if you're around those who were. The wellness company's Spike Support Formula is a daily supplement that can help you feel your best and then stay that way. Go to twccanada.health to get back to that pre-pandemic feeling with Spike Support. Use coupon code REBEL to save 10% off these doctor-formulated products, which are rooted in science. And for a limited time, your first month's membership is only 99 cents. That's twccanada.health, coupon code REBEL at checkout. It's time to put your wellness back in the driver's seat. Living with...
All right, our next story is a bit of a teaser. So we have a report from our mission specialist, David Menzies. God bless him. He is truly one of a kind. He has tracked down a trans rugby player, and we have a video to share with you. I think it'll come out in about an hour, but we're going to premiere it here on the live stream. We'll put a link in the comment section so that you can head on over to the page and wait for this full report. And then you can also just hang around. I think after the live stream, we will be, I think, premiering, showing a clip of it. Well, we have a clip to share with you of the full report. I think it's about 12, 15 minutes. But before we get to it, it's in reference to a Toronto Sun article that was published on June 28th by Joe Warmington. And the title here is Female Rugby Players Complain Trans Opponent Hits Too Hard. So it starts off, female rugby players are not used to feeling like they have been hit by a bus on the field or a truck. A veteran female rugby player who plays for the Stony Creek Camels senior women's team said she was hit so hard in a recent game, it felt like a man delivering the tackle. If this had happened a year earlier, it would have been credited to a male player, but this player for the Fergus Highlanders senior women's rugby team is considered a transitioning person from male to female and was cleared to compete in the women's league. And then there's a photo there. Number 8 is this man who identifies now as a woman named Ash, a non-binary and transitioning from male to female person named Ash. You can see her there, tackling an actual biological woman. And so David, God bless his soul, was able to track down this Ash individual. And you know what? Let's just play a small little teaser here of that full report because it is gold. It is pure gold.
We have a small clip of 1 minute that we can share to people, just like a teaser of it.
Yes.
34-21. Mr. Davis, Ash, why are you doing this? I'm David Menzies, Rebel News.
Hi. No, you're not really a part of this. Human rights.
What about the human rights of biological women being injured by this man? As a mother, why would you expose your kids to a massage?
That is my partner. That is my wife that you are being.
So he's a lesbian?
It's not a sport. Or it's not an issue.
I'm a registered social worker, sir, and I demand human rights for everybody.
Oh, okay.
They just... Yeah, what's a biological female?
How do you feel about a biological male playing in rugby, man?
Thank you. I don't really give a f***. Everybody!
Really? Okay. I don't know what is a crime anymore.
Well, sometimes we all ask ourselves that, right?
Oh my goodness.
I'm sorry. When you transition as a woman, you're not supposed to look at least a little bit feminine?
You would think, right? Like, isn't that kind of the inherent idea behind transitioning, is that you want to look like a woman? This is so unfair. So I want to point out here that rugby is a really intense, high intensity, high impact sport. And this is a grotesque example of an unfair advantage for a biological male who is now said to be transitioning to female to be able to play in this sport with biological females. I mean, we have inherent characteristic physical differences in our bodies, the way we develop through puberty. And this individual, as has been stated in the Joe Warmington article, is hitting women a lot harder than a woman-to-woman impact would result in or would cause. And that one person who says human rights for everybody. Well, what about women's human rights? What about our right to play on a fair, level playing field? This disregards our human rights and our rights to engage in sport in a fair, adequate manner. This is obviously an advantage, and I would love to know how this individual, Ash, I don't know, whatever their they them's pronouns may be, if it's she or her or they zer, how they compared when they played in men's rugby, because there is men's leagues. And I have several gay friends, and some of them played. There's a Toronto men's gay rugby league, and it sounds like Ash isn't actually gay, because them biological male is in a relationship with a woman, but is that woman said that that's her wife, but it's anyway, I'm confused. I don't want to get into the nitty gritty because I get confused. But there is a men's league for gay men, or for, maybe if you're a little bit more on the feminine side. And so I'd love to know if this individual ever tried to play in that league, how they performed. As we see with people like Leah Thomas, they underperform in their own male category. So when they switch over to competing against women, then all of a sudden they're hailed as this renowned athlete. And I wonder if that's the case here again.
But I have 2 points on that. First of all, I already played rugby in my life, and I know how physical and how you can be damaged by, the hit and everything. And I quit because at one point my neck just cracked, and I got scared. And I was like, I would never play that with a man, of course, because it was really physically challenging. But the second point is, okay, is a transitioning man to a woman, is with a woman, so you have a wife, so that means that you have the rights to change in the changing room with other women, and we know that he is attracted by biological women. So my point is, I'm not sure I would be comfortable to be with a trans woman, a biological man, to change in the same room with me, knowing that he's attracted by my physical body. I would
and that's where I say
yeah,
that human rights for everybody. Well, yes, what about the human rights for women to have their spaces protected from biological males who may have nefarious or otherwise intentions when they come into traditional safe spaces like our change rooms, our bathrooms, family change rooms? More and more we're starting to see there are family change rooms now, where there are little kids present. And if you identify as a woman, you can just willy-nilly come into these spaces. And there's no real line in the sand here, it seems, on this topic for upholding the actual safety of biological women and biological females. It's crazy that we even have to say biological before we say those words, because anyone and everyone can now just say, oh, well, I'm a woman, I'm a female, and we can't define it, but we know that we are. It's just, we have this other article here from, no, go ahead, Alexa.
Oh, no, I was just saying, but in the same time, it's good for they, them, I would say, because I don't want to misgender him, they, them. Sorry, I'm getting confused myself. But it receives less harsh hit is actually performing, and he have like to touch the body to what he is attracted to. So the fact that these three things is for him favorable to play in the woman team than a gay team or to a biological man team, because he have all the package for him for them to perform. I would never like
Yeah, I'm
adapt
so
myself
excited for this.
to
I'm
I
so
would
excited
never
for this full report.
me, I have a hard time to adapt myself to they them, and in French is yell. So I just don't. It's just not working.
Well, it doesn't make grammatical sense. And there are some languages like French, like Spanish, so on and so forth, that are inherently masculine and feminine. And so this quite literally does not make phonological or grammatical sense. So that's why we're seeing now you have to make up these new words. And Zzer, I think, was one of the first instances of these made up pronouns. But there's an article here that I wanted to show from yesterday from the Herald, where it says Canada cheated. Nigerian politicians are urging FIFA to address transgenderism in football. Ooh. And yeah, it said there was a tweet, I guess, while reacting to Nigeria's Super Falcons' barren draw against Canada in their opening Group B at the ongoing FIFA Women's World Cup on Friday. They are calling on Canada to discourage transgenderism in football. He claims that Canada is cheating by featuring Quinn, a non-binary transgender footballer in the game, saying our 11 women played against 12 Canadian women because the man has to count as 2 women. And I would say that's pretty accurate. And again, what was the capability of this individual as a man playing within a men's league, and how does it compare now to how they're performing in a women's league? Because it's very easy to beat out women when you have a physical athletic advantage. And that is where the human rights of women should be upheld.
And it is also like where we draw the line, because like in the other country example can decide to just put some men that supposedly are trans just to win the game at the end of the day. Like, who will go and check their personal life and go really deeper? Like, if you identify as and you are trans, now you can just put whatever you want in the team. So I think like we need to draw a line saying that it's no for one country, is no for the other country. That's it.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah, absolutely. Well, let's go to a small ad break here, and then we'll come back and we'll chat about some recent happenings around the COVID shots and vaccines. We're hoping to keep it YouTube safe so that our YouTube viewers can stay tuned here with us.
My mug? I know. It's pretty cool. So is this hoodie I got on, and you could have it on too if you check out our special website at rebelnewsstore.com. That's where you can see Freedom Focus hoodies that we have for you, beanies, cell phone cases, you name it, all while supporting our journalism, where we fight to bring you the other side of the story, as opposed to, being forced by the Trudeau government to fund leftist media out of your taxes. The truth is, without you and your generosity, there is no Rebel News. So again, if you like the reports that we bring you and that we also fight for freedoms in Canada, please consider doing some shopping, picking up some swag at rebelnewsstore.com. We appreciate your support.
No matter what, God will bring us through. And I said, we will not bow down to your gods.
For tickets, showtime details, and to see the trailer, please go to SaveTheChristians.com.
Yeah, and as I mentioned, those events sold out so quickly. So if you're considering getting in on the action in British Columbia, then head over there and get them today, because I think they'll probably start to sell out now that they've been released. Okay, so you know what, we should probably just touch on this quickly because it's relevant and newsy. We should have done this before we had the ad break, but regardless, we're here now. So we have Ontario's Education Minister Stephen Lecce reviewing a Toronto District School Board's anti-racism training in wake of a former principal's suicide. And I believe, I don't know if it came out already, but I believe David Menzies, our beloved mission specialist, also had a report out on this, or coming down the pike anyway. So earlier this year, a 60-year-old retired principal, Richard Blitzto, I hope I didn't butcher that, sued the Toronto District School Board, alleging that his reputation was systemically demolished during 2 anti-Black racism training sessions. And if I didn't mention already, this came from the Toronto Star. And this has led Ontario's Education Minister Stephen Lecce to ask his staff to review the circumstances surrounding a series of anti-racism training sessions held by the TDSB in the spring of 2021, following the recent suicide of the former principal, who said he was bullied and harassed during the sessions. And yeah, they under the guise of inclusivity, diversity, equity, the DEI policies, as they're referred to, they really cause deep shame. Like it's very shameful teachings. And so when this is taught to children, young impressionable children, a lot of parents have an issue with this kind of education, and I would call it indoctrination and propagandization of our children through these DEI policies. But it's funny here that it took someone's death to prompt the education minister to finally have a look at some of these policies and procedures and dig into it. We've had a campaign going at stopclassroomgrooming.com for the last several months, and it's not only geared towards Stephen Lecce, but also all of the other education ministers throughout Canada and various provinces and territories, because this mandate coming down from the provincial government is really unnecessary. It's causing harm. And it has at the end of the day nothing to do with education and reading, writing, and arithmetic. This is just so unfortunate that, again, the concerns of constituents fall on the deaf ears, and it takes someone's death, and in this instance, suicide, for the minister to take this seriously. So I hope that these disturbing allegations are addressed. And as the school year comes, we move into September, that some of these things will be reneged on.
This
what do you
is
think,
actually
Alexa?
Really sad, but I just miss the time when we had just the normal education, geography, math, French, and English, and just the basic topic, and that we learn to see people as they are, without color, without religion, without anything, just to see them as a person, as equality, and not saying anything, and not talking about all these indoctrination about racism or anything else. Because as a kid, you don't know. You just see the other kids as a kids. But if you start to talk to them about oh, but you have people racist in this word. Yeah, they think that white people have more privilege and stuff like that. Of course, the kid would just try to know more and to question themselves why, and afterwards see the gap in between the color of the person. And it should not happen, and that should not happen also with the indoctrination with LGBTQ plus trans things that is happening and the gender ideology and stuff like that is happening in the school too, with drag queen and everything. Just let kids be kids. Let them just study what they should study for their own skill to be able to find a job, or maybe they want to be an artist. Let just do them decide by themselves and not like pushing something on them. And you know it, you have like so many kids.
Yeah, 100%. And the promotion of these ideologies is actually just causing more divide instead of just, as you mentioned, letting kids just be kids and not being taught how to identify people based on these subsets of society, and getting back to the real curriculum and real education, because this has gone and swayed way too far from that. But next up on the docket, we have a clip that's just recently gone, last night, I think, actually just gone viral, of Tucker Carlson and rapper Ice Cube, where they just casually talk about the COVID shots in the back of a vehicle. Let's show this clip.
Take the vax. You had a direct order to take it. You were told to take it.
Yeah. I'm not real good with direct orders, but on a whole nother note,
but it was a command.
I
mean, I'm sorry, they told you. I mean, they couldn't have been clearer about it.
Yeah, it was pretty clear. Did you take it?
Of course not.
Yeah, no. It wasn't ready. You know, it was 6 month, kind of rush job. And I didn't feel safe.
But they told you you were safe.
I know what they said. I know what they said. And I heard them. I heard them loud and clear. But it's not their decision. There's no repercussions if they're wrong. But I get all the repercussions if they're wrong.
Was it a tough call for you?
No, it wasn't a tough call. I wanted to be an example for my kids. Really make sure they didn't take it either. Show them that I wanted to stand on my convictions and that I was willing, to lose $9 million and more, because we've probably lost more, since then.
The idea is that people who stand on their convictions are heroes. They're brave. They have principles. They're the people we look to for inspiration. But in this case, with this decision and these principles, you were not hailed as a hero.
No.
You were attacked.
So why won't you get the vaccine, man? Hey, look, man, I'd just rather be myself than take that vaccine like you other 3 billion bozos.
I never told anyone not to get vaccinated publicly. That was never my message to the world. I didn't even want people to know whether I got vaccinated or not. I was pretty upset that even came out, because I was just gonna quietly, just not take it and
let's cut it.
Deal with the consequences as they came.
Do you know anyone?
This clip really summarizes well what happened for anybody who's following along anyway, and who's aware of the amount of censorship and the misleading by our health authorities. It really summarized it the last 3 years so beautifully in such a simple, concise 3-minute clip. I think Alexa may be having some audio issues, or perhaps it's from my end. I can hear just fine. Alexa, can you hear me?
I can hear you. It's just there is, again, construction in my street, and it's go in and out. It's been like about 4 months that is in and out, just like putting construction and just like disturbing like sometimes my live stream or my video, but it's fine. It's just like what it is in Quebec. It's like we are in permanently construction world.
Yeah, I think that's summertime in Ontario as well. But I wanted to just touch on the pressure where, Ice Cube says, I heard them loud and clear. Like, we knew what they wanted us to do, and we knew what the messaging that they were saying, and good for him to stand up on his convictions for a loss of $9 million. That is an insane amount of money. And then he goes on to mention it was probably even more because he's lost other contracts and whatnot since then. But there is a recent campaign, or will be released anyway. I was able to be part of the preview that's being done by the Canadian COVID Care Alliance in conjunction with the Mama Bears Project, and they're launching a campaign. It will be publicly released tomorrow, called Protect Pregnancy and Breastfeeding. First, do no harm. And in the preview, which happened on Monday night, and I have a written piece here that just went up this morning, that's titled "The Tsunami of Vaccination Pressures Heading Toward Pregnant Women." And so these nefarious forces, right, of Big Pharma, who is promoting products that they will make money off of, right? They're a business. At the end of the day, they have a bottom line. They have a business to run, and they have a grotesque amount of money to make. And so they are targeting and really preying on the vulnerabilities of pregnant women who obviously care deeply about protecting not only their unborn child, but when that child comes out into the world. And so this campaign, which again will be released tomorrow publicly through the Canadian COVID Care Alliance, really does a deep dive into the existing data, what we are being told by our health authorities, how it's misleading, how it's not based on fact or merit. And they'll be releasing, it was a 7-minute video that was really well done, that needed a couple tweaks, at least from what I saw. Plus, they will also have a 1-page summary and then a small information packet to accompany it. But it essentially relies really heavily on historical context with thalidomide, the thalidomide crisis of the 1950s, where pregnant women were prescribed an anti-nausea drug that caused a tsunami, again, to use that word, of fetal abnormalities, deformities to babies, and resulted in, I think it was, they sourced they cite all the stats in their video. I think it was like 800,000 deformities and 200,000 deaths. And I believe that was just from Canada. But the US was actually protected a lot because their one health authority, I don't remember the woman's name, the head of the CDC at the time, but she said basically there's not enough data and evidence to support the approval of this drug, and I'm not going to approve it. And she was kind of standing like she was a lone soldier in her stance on that. And she saved countless, hundreds of thousands of babies and mothers from this horrific tragedy just by simply following the science. And that is something that we've been said to be following for the last 3 years. But in fact, if you follow the money, it makes more sense because the science doesn't support a lot of these policies and implications. Sorry, I should say, and impositions. But there's also this other drug that is called DES, and I can't pronounce the technical chemical name of it, but it was prescribed to pregnant women as an to prevent miscarriage, essentially. And then what it did is it caused fertility implications in the developing fetus. And so that baby, so these are issues that were given to their mothers during pregnancy, and then the repercussions of that drug were not known for 15, 20, 30 years later. So these COVID injections, there's no long-term safety data. We have no idea what the implications are going to be on the babies whose mothers receive these shots in utero during pregnancy. We quite literally need to wait another 20 years, 15 to 20 years to figure it out. So this campaign really highlights the risk. And something really compelling that Ice Cube mentioned there is that the health authorities don't have to deal with the repercussions. I do, or the consequences, I think is what he called it. And renowned OBGYN obstetrical gynecologist James Thorpe, who's based in the United States, he was part of the panel. He was one of the panelists in this campaign preview. And he ended part of his session by urging pregnant women and women of expectant childbearing years to become informed reminding them that the people spreading misinformation won't have to bear the consequences of what could possibly go wrong. You will. And that really resonated with me. And then when I heard Ice Cube say essentially the same thing, I thought, wow, that's really powerful and true, right? No one has to deal with the fallout of an adverse reaction other than the person suffering it. Justin Trudeau doesn't have to. Theresa Tam doesn't have to. These people are not liable here. You are, at the end of the day.
But what happened with the protocol that they say that for pregnant women, if you are proceeding to give them either a vaccine or a treatment, this needs to pass a experimental phase trial for more than a regular person. So I think it's about 20 years. And about 6 months, we did give to some of them for about 6 months of trial, not even to some pregnant woman. This is just like outrageous to see that, because why we are just putting the protocol, that safe protocol, in the garbage when we not learn from the past, as you say, about thalidomide and all other like medication that we did give to the pregnant woman who did suffer from that. Not only them, but the kids also. And now we just like say, oh, now no worries. With like COVID, we can do whatever we want. Like no worries. Like everything is safe and effective.
That's right. Well, and we have here also an article that went out yesterday from our writer, Alex Dollywall, where Senior Health Canada official, so it was Celia Lorenko, she works for Health Canada, she is responsible in a legally binding affidavit. She acknowledged that she was the one responsible for authorizing the COVID injections under emergency use authorization, or in Canada, it was called an interim order. But she called underreporting of adverse events a well-known fact. And this was originally reported by the Epoch Times. And I've also done a video on this particular hearing. It's happening at the Federal Public Sector Labor Relations and Employment Board. It took place on February 13th, where public servant Bernard Degagné actually cross-examined Celia Lorenko, and he is representing, I think it's 65 federal employees who were put on a leave without pay and then denied their employment insurance because either they refused to disclose their COVID-19 vaccine status or they refused to comply with that federal workplace mandate. And I will have an interview with Bernard Degagné coming up. He is on vacation. And then likewise, I have some events to attend. So we are coordinating this in the coming week or two. But he has the data, and he is a former mathematician, biostatistician. And so his data collection abilities are amazing. And what we're going to do is an interview to feature some of the data he used to cross-examine Celia Lorenko, who appears to be just so aloof and unaware of anything that kind of like counteracted that one size fits all safe and effective narrative. But here you have her admitting, and she admitted during her cross-examination, and this article goes in depth into that and links back to some of those other reports. So I'd recommend anyone who's interested to learn more, go right to this report to find out. But basically, the underreporting is a massive problem. And we have no idea how many actual adverse events are taking place because of that issue with underreporting. And this goes back even to May of 2021, when former emergency room physician Patrick Phillips joined me to discuss the fact that all 5 of his COVID-related adverse events reports were rejected by his local medical officer of health based on technicalities, not on the actual merits. Because in Canada, we have such a layered, bureaucratic, red tape riddled system to navigate just to have your vaccine reaction actually formally documented. Some would argue it's worse than what they have in the United States, the CDC's VAERS, Vaccine Adverse Events Reporting System, which has an underreporting rate. Some have estimated to be at even 99%, which is just absolutely insane to think about.
And the funny part here is like, a lot of people have discovered Ribbon News during the lockdown because of the COVID fine. And afterwards, a lot of people did discover Ribbon News after the suffer from side effects because their doctor didn't wanted to link the side effects to the shot, and afterward they didn't want it to fill the form for them to declare it. So a lot of people like have turned and checked what we are doing and try to get help following those events. And I encourage everybody like to if you have like something to report on us, like if you have like some tip or information or you want to share your story, you can do so at our email tips@ribbonnews.com.
Yeah, absolutely. And I have a few that I just, if any of you are listening, the people who have reached out to me, I am sorry, I just don't have the time to respond to everybody. We literally get thousands of tips every single day. And it is very difficult trying to keep up with everyone. So we're about 3 minutes past the hour now. Alexa, did you want to show your clip about Joanie, and then we'll get into some super chats before we wrap this up?
Yeah, I would love like that people are aware of the Joanie case. I think it's really important.
Do you have anything to say about the Save Joanie campaign, or we'll just show this clip, I guess.
Yeah.
Ouais, il est long en plus de ça. Oui, parce qu'il faut qu'il aille en haut. Ouais. Puis ça, c'est qui vous l'a prodigué? C'est moi, c'est nous. Ça a-tu coûté cher? Ouais. C'est combien environ? 12. Tabarouette, tu me niaises, là, 12 000. OK, je vois, là, OK, je comprends le processus, que c'est long à tourner.
So,
ouais, quand les tournages, ils prennent moins vite.
The whole like video is explaining that the lift, the chair lift, they needed to buy it by themselves. It was $12,000 for putting on their house, because the other option was moving from that house to another. But they built the house back in 2000. I think it's been 10 years. Like they did build the house. Her and her boyfriend that she's been with like for a long time. So Joanie was she knows since she's young that she has cystic fibrosis. In 2012, she went to the hospital because her situation went down, but they put her on the list. She was about 30-ish on the waiting list, but they told her you have about 5 years to come to live, but she was not ready for that. So her minding permitted her to do yoga and try to stabilize her body to a point that she was able to travel. She was able to do other like activity until like in 2020, she got COVID, and she had already a pre-existing like situation where, of course, like she had trouble with her lung. So her situation went again down. She went to the hospital. It's when they told her like that they would probably need to think to put her on the waiting list. And is in 2021 when she went back to the hospital, because her situation was really not going well, that she learned in October 2021 that not only she was put back in the waiting list because she didn't know, but she was removed on the waiting list, and she was 8 on the waiting list because she was not vaccinated against the COVID-19, of course. So at that point in 2021, she was the perfect candidate, healthy, just like the cystic fibrosis that she had. But she was like strong enough to have like the surgery. She was the perfect candidate for proceeding to the transplant, but they refused her to have so. And at one point, at that time, they were asking for 2 shots, but with the time, the ethic the ethic group did go into her case, and they find out that now they're asking 3 shots. Same
Yeah, the
if she had,
boosters.
yeah, and she got COVID 3 times during the whole process, and she had adverse effect from other previous vaccine in the past. So it's why she really don't want to risk her life to take that one, because she almost died when she got the one for H1N1 in the past. And she said, I really don't want to do so, because either way, if I take it or not, the situation will finish at the same point. I'm going to pass. So the transplant group from the hospital doesn't want to contact her at all until she got the vaccine. Nobody is trying to contact her about what is going on. Only like the really close, the nurse and the doctor are following her for the medication and oxygen and everything. But right now, she almost like wanted to give up until I called her back and say, no, like we will fight still. And if you want to sign the petition we started for her, go at savejoanie.ca. Savejoanie.ca. On this website, you can sign the petition and help her to make her voice being heard. She's only 38 years old, and I think she have like multiple more years to come to live and to enjoy the life that she have with her boyfriend and with the life that she built for her to be happy.
We'll actually be pivoting also our Organs Not Coercion campaign that was at one time specific to the case of Sheila Annette Lewis, who's being treated similarly in Alberta. So we're going to pivot that campaign now in light of Garnet Harper, the Ontario man, 35-year-old father of 5, who tragically died due to complications of his need for a kidney transplant, and him just simply not being referred for that transplant because of his COVID-19 vaccine status. So because these things are still happening, and they're happening across Canada in various provinces and territories, we're going to pivot that campaign at organsnotcoercion.com to include all of the stories of this injustice. And we'll have an update hopefully in the coming day or two for our viewers. I've been informed here from our producer, Efron, that the link that we were originally going to premiere David's report on the they-them rugby player Ash has been changed, and so just stay tuned because it will be premiering on YouTube shortly, but not at the redirect link that was originally shared in the comments. And of course, if you're signed up to our mailing list, rebelnews.com, you can just stay tuned there, or stay tuned on YouTube or any of the other streaming platforms like Rumble, Odyssey, or Getter to view that report. I think in about 20 minutes or so, it will be coming out. We have 2 quick super chats that we'll get to, and then we have to wrap this up. I have another meeting to get to. I apologize. But we have Bedrock gives $5. Thank you very much. Tamara, any chance you will be attending the Free Speech in Medicine conference? I wasn't aware that that was happening, so I will follow that link here and have a closer look. I don't know if it's happening in Canada or where. But anyway, I'll have a look there. Thank you for bringing it to my attention. And then Alta Peasley gives $5. Thank you very much. I do love what you bring forward, but was just wondering if you are going to be doing anything on the Coots 4. Well, our Rebel commander, Ezra Levant, has been handling the issue with the Coots 4. From what I gather, there are pretty extreme and I would say necessary publication bans brought on behalf of the defense. The lawyers there have petitioned the Crown to put forward publication bans. So I think that any individual can go in and see and read some of the court documents. If you're not familiar, if you don't understand what's going on there, you can read them for yourself, but we can't actually publish anything publicly because of the publication bans that are in place for a good reason. Like, I agree that in order to get a fair access to a trial and a jury, that these publication bans are being instituted for a really good reason. And so, unfortunately, for that reason, we have to be very careful with what we say about that topic. And Ezra would be the person who's most familiar. He's read the court documents himself. I have not seen them. I know some of what they say, but not in a sense that I'm comfortable to speak on it in terms of publishing it on air. I don't want to go to jail for being in contravention of a publication ban, because that's the repercussion there. If you contravene a publication ban, you are liable and you can go to jail. So I think what we'll do is just we will end this live stream with Ezra's latest update on the Coots 4 and what's going on there. And of course, you can stay tuned on all of our reporting. And Ezra's reporting either on his Twitter account or at rebelnews.com. So with that, I guess we will end our live stream here. Thanks to Efron for running the behind the scenes show. Thanks, Alexa, for joining me. I didn't know yesterday that it would be us again, but it's always a good time. And of course, everyone else behind the scenes who made this possible, from our writers to our editors to the people our graphics team who makes the thumbnails. There's a lot of moving parts that take place that, Alexa and I are the front and center, but there's so many people behind the scenes who make this all possible. So thank you to all of them. And join us again, same time and place, 1 to 2 p.m. Eastern, YouTube, Rumble, Getter, or Odyssey. We'll see you here tomorrow.
The trial is almost a year away, but I'll come out and I'll let you know what I see, and then I'll give you my thoughts as best I can without stepping on the publication ban of what I think.
Liberal light media made it. Good job, bud.
You can see that there are some people here who are upset that Rebel News is not championing these 4 men. I've had a few encounters like that. Someone who, by the looks of them, would probably be a Rebel News supporter and probably was until recently. They don't understand why we're not crowdfunding for these men. And in some ways, I can't tell you that because of the publication ban. What I can tell you is that the money raised by both Rebel News and the Democracy Fund was to defend people for civil liberties offenses, people who committed civil disobedience. As you may know, because you may be a donor yourself, we did not crowdfund to defend people accused of conspiracy to commit murder. Now, there is a crowdfunding page not run by us that if you want to give to these 4 men, you can certainly do so. And I'm not here to tell you to do so or not to do so. But I can explain that neither Rebel News nor the Democracy Fund will take our donors' money for men who are charged with conspiracy to commit murder. And when the facts come out in the trial, you may see for yourself whether or not this was a wise decision on our part. But you can see the frustration that someone who, just by the looks of them, would probably be a Rebel News supporter in every other way, that they don't understand why we're not throwing our lot in with these men. And unfortunately, it's against the law for me to tell you on camera. I'm going to go into court right now and live tweet the proceedings. I don't know if anything important is going to turn on it. I will come out to finish my report later today.